you think this is sustainable? Do you think this is sustainable? There was a high school shooting in the recent days in Georgia, Appalachia High. And it's all over the news. Everyone's talking about it. It's making waves in the media. And it made me think about a pattern that I've been seeing for some time now. And it's a pattern of nihilism. Nihilism is on the rise in America, and in Gen Z in particular. And by nihilism, I mean a lack of care and a lack of belief in the goodness of life, or a lack of belief in the perpetuation or the proliferation of goodness in life. That is what nihilism is, and I see it multiplying. I see it becoming more popular in our time. We don't value life as much as we did in the past. The value of life has gone down. We have devalued life, and it's a problem. There's a problem in this current generation. There's a problem in our time where we look at people as if they're not the most valuable creatures on earth. We look at people as if they're comparable to animals. We are not comparable to animals. We are not cattle. We are not replaceable. We are not easily dispensable. Each human being has worth and value beyond imagination. And so the crisis of crime that we see today has deeper roots, has roots that, unless dug up, will not be discovered. How tragic is it that a 14-year-old kid can go to a school and have it in his mind to murder his peers, to kill his peers and his educators? How tragic is that? And of course, the problem stems from the home. Of course, the problem stems from the home. What is the reason for this? And I don't want to hear about, it's just mental health issues, and there's no real problems in this generation. There's no real problems in our time. It's just a few bad apples. I don't buy that at all, not for a second. Of course there are a few bad apples. Of course there are people with mental issues. Of course. But there's a deeper problem in our society where people feel like it is okay to do this type of thing. Mass killings of this sort is not okay. It cannot become commonplace. It cannot become natural. And I am a part of Gen Z, and I think it is a problem. I think it needs to be talked about, and I think the root needs to be addressed. The root cause of this problem needs to be addressed, and so we're going to talk about it. What causes nihilism? What causes this proliferation of a lack of care for life and the things of life? What causes this devaluation of human beings, of our fellow human beings, of our peers, of our loved ones? What's caused that? Now, we know that anything we consume for a long amount of time has a significant effect on us. I don't mean to sound like a boomer. But I think it's common sense at this point. Music videos, video games, TV shows, movie series, thrillers. All those things influence how we see life, how we think about things, and the broader culture in general. There is some kid out there that's going to argue that, these things don't have a negative effect on me, and I'd never do these things. Well, sir, you are not everyone in the world. And I'm by no means advocating for these things to be banned or throttled in any way. I'm just saying that these issues, these productions are part of the reason why mental health is deteriorating, because people see these things way too often, and it influences how we think about life. It's inevitable. It is inevitable. Anything you see with repetition is going to have an effect on you. Anything you experience with repetition is going to have an effect on you. And let's not, we could even talk about the fact that most people are lonely and neglected. Most people are starved of attention. Most kids are starved of attention. Most people are starved of attention. How many parents do you see with their kids as soon as their kids begin to act up, which is natural for a kid to act up when they're seeking attention? How often do you see parents simply hand their kid an iPad to shut them up? No care, no presence of mind, no love. Right? Now, what does someone do when they're starved of attention for their entire life? How do they act? What actions do they take? What steps do they take to get this attention they so naturally desire? Bad things happen. Bad things happen. And Gen Z is suffering. We are not doing okay. We are not doing okay. These problems you see, there is a reason. Nothing just happens randomly. Right? Societies just don't just go bad randomly. There are root causes. And unless these root causes are addressed, unless these issues are brought up in conversation, then these problems will never be solved. I'm not saying I know what the root causes are. I'm simply beginning the discussion. Because until someone in our generation brings up these ideas and begins chipping away at the issue, these issues will never be solved. Nihilism is on the rise in the US, Western culture in general, and the world at large. How are we going to counter it? How are we going to counter these things? Why is it that the loneliest generation has the highest crime rates? There has to be some correlation. I know I'm talking off the top of my head. The stats probably don't line up with what I'm saying. I don't care. These are things I observe with my own two eyes. I'm going to speak accordingly. Why is it that people seem to be more lonely than ever? And although we seem to be more lonely than ever, we are spending a lot more time on these devices interacting with people, even though we are in our rooms locked away alone, right? That's going to have an effect. Right? People are in solitude, isolated in terms of feelings, understanding, and physically, right? And these things will have an effect at some point or another, and I think we're beginning to see the effect in this generation. And I'm not here to talk bad about Gen Z. Of course I know they're great apples. They're great people in every generation. Don't get me wrong, but I think there's a significant problem in Gen Z that can easily be rooted out. I believe that fully. But until we begin to address these issues and ask ourselves why our generation is going in this direction, why these things happen so often, what are the causes? There has to be some common denominator. We could talk about the lack of community. There is no community anymore. These things would be solved if people were paying attention. For these things to happen, there has to be a series of mistakes along the way. These things don't just happen out of the blue. Someone doesn't just get up and commit these actions, right? And of course I know there are exceptions. Of course I know. But I'm just saying, generally speaking, these things don't come out of nowhere. There are a series of things leading up to these events, and they were left unchecked. And then these things happen, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh my goodness, I just can't believe. Really? You can't believe it? Really? That's interesting. One thing, all I gotta say, man, parent your kids. Parents out there, if you have kids, pay attention to your kids. You do not have an excuse to say, oh, because I worked, I'm tired, you don't have that excuse. You brought these kids into this world. You have a responsibility to them. You pay attention to your kids. They need your attention. It's natural for them to crave your attention. You're their parents, for God's sake. Act like it. I don't mean to come on here and scold people, but I think it's full time we address this issue as it needs to be addressed. Talking plainly as we see the issue at hand. And that's what I intend to do here. Nihilism is on the rise. How do we combat this? Love is one of the most potent emotions. That's lacking, right? People hardly care for each other. Social trust is in hell, right? It's under the ground, bro. And a society cannot sustain itself like this, obviously. If the people in a society are having a hard time in community with each other, then it cannot be a society for much longer. It's common sense. It is common sense. And then soon nihilism rises and people begin to feel ostracized. And if everyone feels ostracized, then soon we have a warrior culture, a warrior-like culture where everyone is out for themselves. Every man for himself. And then everything is about me, what I can get, and not about the next person. I don't care about your right to live if I think I'm in this for my survival. Why would I care about your right to live? If I think you don't love me and no one loves me in general, why would I care about you or anyone? Duh. We can't act all surprised when these things happen, right? We can't act all surprised when these things happen. See, we like to live in our little bubbles and live in our comfortable lives and say, oh, my life is good and my family loves me. I have a dad that loves me. And we just look at these troubled kids and we just say, oh, poor thing. And we just move on about our day. And then when these things happen, we act surprised. I kid you not. I guarantee, and I believe this fully, many mistakes were made before that issue occurred. Many mistakes were made along the way before that tragedy occurred. And I want to say, rest in peace to all the fallen victims. I mean that. Because they did not deserve any of these things. I'm not blaming anyone necessarily. I'm just saying, we as a society, we need to pay attention. That's the only way we can move forward. We cannot wallow in the despair of the fact that our society is going downhill. We need to do something. Do something. How about we try not to let this happen again, truly? Each and every man, each and every person. How about that? I think that's a step. I think that's progress, right? That's what we should do. That's a step in the right direction. Come on. Society does not need to go downhill. We need to make decisions that prop up our culture, that buttress community, and not tear it down. We do not need to ostracize people and point the finger at any one group or the other. It's time to come together. It is time to see to it that this upcoming generation has a good foundation. It is time to work together again. What the hell, America? Come on. Anyway, I just thought I'd come on here and talk about this issue. It really hit home, you know? It really hit home. And hopefully this encourages some people to do something, because this is not sustainable. Obviously. Anyway, thank you for watching. This is Corban Conversations. Seek on. Peace out.